Thank you. Got a license for that?
I need one?
No, you don't. It just sounded good. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Super excited to get started. We're going to be doing today a specific type of machine, a traditional drop machine that we order from VMFS USA, and they are a custom builder, but they also have some canned experiences for machines. The account we're at required a specific machine because they needed a traditional drop machine just because of some of the language barriers of some of the folks here in understanding how to use a AI cooler. So we wanted to combo, utilize an AI cooler for those who had the capability to use it, but also a traditional drop machine for the comfort. And to be candid, the traditional drop machine does more business overall just because of that. But we're going to go over a full deep dive of this particular traditional drop machine that VMFS sent us. I think we're really, in all reality, it's probably the best machine we have, or one of the best. I've been very impressed with a lot of the functionality. And next video, we're going to do a telematics and telemetry deep dive for their specific software, so look forward to that. If you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave them down below, and don't forget to subscribe.
Hey guys, today's content is brought to you by VMFS USA. They went ahead and sponsored us for this video. They work with a bunch of folks. They have terrific machines. The options are insane. Just go to vmfsusa.com to check them out.
So let's talk about the big thing with most vending machines, and that's really, in all reality, just the aesthetics. How does it look? The biggest thing about vending machine is it really is like your retail spot. So it's like someone is standing there selling your goods, whether it be soda, drinks, chips, whatever it may be. Someone's literally standing there assisting selling your goods, but instead it's the machine doing it. So if it doesn't look good, it's not going to sell your goods. So it's super important that it looks great. So a couple of key factors I think that no one thinks about is you got this standard black vending machine. AMS, like an AMS 39, any of the USI winner products out there that are 5-wide snacks or 5-wide combo machines, they all look pretty much the same. They're all black in color or black and gray. They have a keypad, some sort of payment system, whether it be just a card reader for credit card or both a card reader and cash as well. And they all do the same thing. So user experience, I think, is part of it. The other thing is, when you look at like most machines, how is it displaying your goods? So does it have one LED strip, 2 LED strips that are really showcasing what you have? I think that's important as well. And most modern machines you'll find do have that. But how do they look inside? Do they look clean? Do they look neat? And then the other portion is how do you service them? How do you get the trays out? Do the trays lay down? Do the trays come out straight? What if you have an issue with a tray or a motor? How do you fix it? So all these things I think are super important. So the physical aspects are super important of a machine. So what's different about VMFS? I think VMFS, when I originally spoke to them last year, I was hunting for something different than what our standard USI machines, because we use a lot of USI machines and they're great. USI machines are great, but there's a few things that come to mind. One, the interfaces are pretty standard across the board. Nothing really changes. Two, USI has a significant problem with just the weight of their machines. Their machines are very heavy compared to even an AMS machine. So I wanted to look for something that had a newer, fresher look for interface. Somebody who wasn't addicted to the standards necessarily that NAMA puts out there, for instance. So I looked around, and everybody gets scared of what? They get scared of one thing: ordering something from somebody they don't know, which we took the leap of faith and we reached out to VMFS and we ordered a machine, a custom machine. So we ordered that custom machine, we got it in, and we used it for an outside location at one of our accounts. And at first, it looked like any other machine, but the biggest difference was it weighed significantly less, which can be a pro or a con depending on where you're putting it. Now, nobody talks about bolting a machine down, but bolting a machine down brings its own set of problems, which we'll review some other time. But a machine that doesn't weigh 900, 1,000 pounds is a big deal when you're a small vendor and you're trying to move it. Paying someone to move that size machine is going to run you upwards of $800 depending on who you're hiring and where you're at in the country.
All right, 1, 2, come on, move. Yep, almost there.
So that machine being right around 600 to 650 pounds is a huge advantage. The second thing is it's just a beautiful machine, really not having the aesthetics of just a standard black machine, but then also the LED light strips going from top to bottom. The other thing is too, is we found is that it really has in all reality a larger kind of interface overall. Less one thing, which is a caveat, is the actual interface where you're looking for prices, the actual screen. The screen itself is a little bit smaller, or even the interface or the GUI, you'll call it, the user interface is smaller. The other thing is too, is depending on which machine you order from VMFS is going to determine how it operates. So those are a few things, but aesthetically great. Couple of great things. One is the adjustability of the feet were really easy to deal with. I wish it came with some sort of skirt or had a skirt that went around the bottom so folks did not see that. But overall, great. If you ever adjusted a USI machine, you'll know that depending on if it's got the 6 legs or 4 legs on it, that you've got the large wrench, and that wrench is actually grinding into the pavement, but the actual feet are only like maybe 2.5 inches. The ones on the VMS machine are much larger, so it's much easier to get it balanced out, which was great. And I noticed that they put actual like 8 points where they actually soldered the actual unit to the receiver for the actual feet. So great job there. Another thing that nobody really focuses on a machine is going to be the internals as far as how the cooling system is set up in the cooling deck. So that cooling deck looks to be very easy to remove and replace, which is great. USI and AMS, theirs are pretty easy as well, so I don't think that there's a really big difference there. So let's talk about user interface and software. Originally, when we purchased the machine from VMFS, one thing that they noted was that they had their own backend in telematics, which to be candid, we haven't used yet. And part of the reason for not using it is we're just so familiar with Nayax's core that why would you use another telematics? Although they do provide functionality such as remote video capability, which we've reached out to them and will be actually talking about in future videos, because depending on where you're putting a machine, you may want that video. And I think that's super important, and that functionality is easy. I hear it all the time in forums. How do you get video on a machine? Well, VMFS has it. So let's talk about interface, what the machine interface kind of acts like for customers. It's really basic. So it really looks and acts the same as any other vending machine. However, there is some functionality called multi-vend, which you'll find in other countries is pretty common. But here in the States relies on the actual card reader providers to do that through incremental authorization. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't freak out. Ultimately, it just provides a button that you can select multiple items. It shows you what items, and then you just actually hit the enter button, and it allows you to vend all those items under one transaction. So what does that mean? Well, it's kind of twofold. One, it's great because you can sell more items, right? That's awesome. If anybody's tried to use incremental authorization on Nayax or Cantaloupe, it's always a disaster, and it never works quite right. NDB codes don't get transmitted. So when I saw that, I was super excited. However, and it's a big asterisk, the issue becomes is the MDB code and the DEX file do not update properly when people multi-vend. So it only shows you the first item that they selected. So if they pick a Sprite and a bag of chips on a multi-VIN transaction, it is only going to deduct the Sprite from your telematics par. So meaning it's only going to take the Sprite out of your inventory in your machine. The chips, it's going to leave. That's a problem. Now, is it the end of the world? No, because in all reality, multi-VINs are about 20% of our total sales. So we've just decided at the end of the day, look at what sells more often and kind of go old school under some circumstances, and it's worked out pretty well for us. So you can switch it off, and we can go into another video to show you how to switch that off. But VMFS really has that portion locked down because these are using Android systems that TNC has developed, and they are retrofitting and or fitting these machines with additional functionality. So they're definitely subject matter experts in the machine portion. And as operators, you know, I've given them some guidance over the course of a few months that's really helped them kind of hone in on really what they want to do. Let's talk about physically loading and opening the machine. You know, opening the machine, super simple, a standard process that you'd find with any other manufacturer out there. So you've got multiple types of machines that they design. The machine that we have has a standard single swing door, inserting your key, and you turn it you know, counterclockwise for a certain amount of revolutions until you open the machine. Now, the biggest difference I noticed with the VMFS machine is that the door is not as heavy and is hinged properly. If you've ever seen some of the older USIs and even newer ones, as they get older, they tend to separate at the base because of how heavy, especially if the machine is not balanced properly. And so what happens is, because the weight of the door is shifted at a certain angle, the other side it'll actually twist the bottom of the unit, causing it to separate at the bottom, especially if you have condensation that's creating rust at some point. So having a lighter door is a pro, and it can be a con too, depending on the vandalism aspect. So something to be aware of there. But loading the machine is super simple. The trays actually have 2 latches on each side, the left and right. You lift those up and pull the tray out by lifting up on it just a little bit. Pull the tray all the way out, but be prepared. It's just like any other tray. These trays, especially if you use an AMS machine, they're going to fall at an angle so that you can load the machine. A couple of caveats for this VMFS machine. While it's designed very well from the perspective of a lot of the software and the aesthetics of the machine, one thing I've noticed is loading this can actually be more difficult, only because you really need to adjust the vertical height to really match what you're doing. I say that for 2 things. One, they use risers. So if you don't know what a riser is a plastic piece that goes all the way through the coil for anything that would not sit all the way in the coil. Typical coil pitches for a USI or AMS machine would be wide enough that the cans especially would sit all the way in the coil. That's not the case for these machines. So far that we've ordered from VMFS, they use a riser, and the can sits on top of the riser. The coil pushes the riser, or pushes the actual can, excuse me. So it pushes the can on the riser, and when it gets to the end, it falls. It's a simple setup. There's pros and cons to it. One is, that means you need a little bit more vertical space. And so that vertical space transcends to your next shelf, and to your next shelf, and to your next shelf. The other thing is, because the vertical space is a little bit shorter than it would be in some of these other machines, when you talk about them being 6 in height, you really have to be particular about some of your items and how high the shelves are between each other. I say that because of this. It's very difficult in the far ends to get 16.9 ounce Pepsi products in because they're slightly taller. So you actually have to put them in the coil and twist them to get them in the farthest coil in the back on each side. The good thing is that I like about these machines is the shelving is plastic. Now, why everybody freaks out? Oh my gosh, plastic! Why plastic? You should use, you know, metal, steel, aluminum shelving.
I don't like plastic shelves. Why? Because they are plastic. That's why.
No, I lift enough sodas per day. I lift enough per day doing it myself. Even with the guys that we use to load on occasion, there's no reason to have to lift shelves out of there. There's no benefit, in all reality, in my opinion, to having more weight. Where the shelf does one thing, it stores goods. So why would you want to have a shelf that is going to create more work for you? So we found that we really like the plastic shelving. Now the bottom is still like an aluminum, so that's great, but the adjustability on the bottom of the unit is great. And you actually pull 2 pins and you can adjust the shelving, so that's great. And you can actually get riveted shelves as well if you want to stick with a standard, so it's entirely up to you, but adjusting those is way easier than like an old school USI where you actually have to unscrew the panels if they're metal and then move the panels around. Now, AMS has a slightly better design when it comes to moving those dividers around, but these are the best. By all means, having a plastic pin that you pull on each side and you can just simply shift them to a new position is excellent. So I think it's a great design. Few flaws that you need to be aware of. It is much easier for items to get jammed if you are not loading them correctly. Why? Well, it's twofold. One, if you use a riser when you don't need a riser, that can create problems. If you're not using a riser when you need a riser, that can create problems as well. Why? Well, if you're using a riser where you don't need a riser, goods may flip over. Like there's just not enough physically touching the coil, especially light items or things that are too tall. It'll just flip right over. So that's one, and then you just have a mess on your hands. But the other issue is when you stick a can, especially in a improperly pitched coil without a riser, what happens is it spins the entire can until it drops. It's terrible for the motors, it's terrible for the machine, and it will wear on your trays as well. Why did we change out our bill acceptor in CoinMag? Well, we changed out our bill acceptor because our customer required a appreciation program and they wanted to have a voucher of some sort to use. Well, the only ones that really do that is like an MEI Talos bill acceptor. There's a few others out there, but these came with ICTs. ICTs just don't have the capability. The other thing is we like to have a larger capacity cartridge, coin cartridge. So, and we had a lot of Conlux left in our back stock. So we used our Conlux for that machine and moved that machine's coin mechanism to a smaller unit that doesn't have as much throughput. But the ICT units that came with it are great. They're not my favorite. I wouldn't pick them if it was me. I think that's where you may have an advantage if you're buying or purchasing a new machine or leasing a new machine from USI and or AMS. Both of those typically come with MEI. So that's something to be aware of. I think folks really miss out on the cash acceptance portion and how well some of those coin mechanisms and bill acceptors actually work. So pay attention to that. I think VMFS doesn't get it wrong here, but I don't think it's necessarily right either. I think cost may be a factor. And so let's talk about cost. So cost, what does the cost actually look like? So ordering a custom machine, there obviously was some additional cost for us, but even ordering a custom machine, outside machine that had all of the flexibility to be outside, they even sent us a cover for it, which was great. And having the additional refrigeration capabilities as far as just some different insulation and a different sized, I think it may be a different size, I'm not sure, a different size cooling deck, but I know that there's a different R value or insulation on the outside walls of the unit. You can definitely tell. So, but cost-wise, so what does a USI or AMS brand new combo machine typically run? You can really assume those machines can be anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000. So what do we pay for the VMFS? Well, with all the custom work, it obviously was more, but it was right around $7,100 delivered to the door, which to be candid really isn't bad. And mind you, we probably added $2,000 worth of options. So in the grand scheme of things, you could go much cheaper and really get probably a better functioning unit or a unit that would be much better for somebody who's starting out. I don't know if I would pick an AMS or a USI right off the rip of starting like a vending business. I think the aesthetics alone of the VMFS system and the VMFS branding and the way that they design the machine, I think is much better for somebody who's just starting. If you're just starting and you buy a $7,000 machine that you don't know how to use, nor do you know how to program, and is difficult to deal with, and doesn't look good, you're going to have lower sales. You're going to have a lot of issues loading the machine. You're also going to have a lot of issues with the customer support. Don't get me wrong. If I was to pick anybody, the big dogs in the game is obviously going to be USI or AMS. And AMS just got bought out by Sega, if I'm not mistaken. So in our reality, USI is the only one that has like VinNet with the customer support that you can call basically at any time in their regular business hours, and they can assist you through that for free. VMFS has done that for us as well. However, I don't know if they just have the size to compete at that level. But what's worth it to you more? The aesthetics, the functionality, even the cost in our reality, I think really can add up and put against that customer support portion, especially the cost. You know, a USI a Vogue combo machine can be $8,000 plus. You know, a 5-wide VMFS, I think you get around $5,000 or less, depending on obviously the options you select. So something to really think about. Well, that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for coming on and watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Next video, we're going to be talking more about some of the Vending 101. We're going to be talking about the differences between some of the smart coolers. We're going to review a HaHa smart cooler first in our first video series. And then we're going to talk about what's the difference in the next video between using an AI cooler and using a old school traditional machine and where they fit the best. Thanks.